I never thought my life would turn into something straight out of a mystery novel. But when the phone rang that morning, everything I thought I knew about the world shattered. The caller ID flashed Mrs. Hadley's name. She was a retired neighbor, a sweet old lady who usually just wanted to chat about the weather or remind me about some errand or another. But that morning, there was an urgency in her voice I hadn't heard before. "Jason," she asked, her voice trembling slightly, "I didn't want to bother you, but I just saw your wife, Catherine, enter your house with someone else." She paused, as if weighing her words. "But the main thing isn't the door, it's the basement. They came in through the basement, and they turned off the lights in the whole neighborhood." I froze. Mrs. Hadley wasn't one to make wild accusations. She had always been the quiet type, watching life from her front porch like a hawk. Something was off, and my gut churned as I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. "Wait, what do you mean? The basement? The lights? Are you sure about this?" My voice sounded more panicked than I intended. I was still half asleep, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "I saw it clearly, Jason. They went down the stairs, and right after, the entire block went dark. I thought you should know." Before she could say another word, I hung up. My heart was pounding, adrenaline surging through me. I wasn't a rookie anymore. I was a retired police officer, for God's sake. I should have seen something like this coming. The signs were always there, if only I had paid closer attention. I grabbed my flashlight, shoved my feet into boots, and rushed downstairs. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening. Catherine? With someone else? The basement? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I reached the basement door, the same door I'd locked behind me the night before. I didn't dare open it. Instead, I pressed my ear to the wood. Through the thick, solid door, I could hear muffled sounds. At first, it was hard to make them out, but then the laughter hit me. That laugh. Catherine's laugh. It was familiar and cold, yet not quite right. I held my breath, straining to hear. The voice that followed, however, was definitely not mine. A man's voice. A man I didn't recognize. I had to know what was happening. My pulse raced, but I fought the instinct to run. Slowly, I turned the knob, pushing open the door. The basement was dark, save for the flickering light of my old laptop on the table. The low hum of the machine filled the silence, and I stepped forward, my boots echoing in the cold, musty air. On the screen, I saw footage of my own house, my bedroom, the kitchen, even the bathroom. My breath caught in my throat. It took a moment for the reality to hit. Hidden surveillance cameras. Cameras I hadn't set up. But that wasn't even the worst part. One of the clips showed Catherine sitting across from the man whose voice I just heard. They were in the living room, on the couch, and she was smiling into the camera. Then she spoke. "He doesn't suspect anything," she said, her voice low and soft, like she was telling a secret. "A little more, and he will break down." My hands went cold as I stared at the screen. What the hell was going on? My head was spinning. I stared at the screen, still trying to process what I was seeing. Catherine, the woman I'd spent years with, the woman I trusted, had been playing a game I hadn't even known existed. I leaned closer to the laptop, my heart pounding as I watched the footage. Catherine's face filled the screen, her eyes locked on the camera as if she knew I was watching. She looked calm, almost serene, but there was something cold about the way she looked at the lens. A sense of control, of manipulation. "A little more, and he will break down," she'd said. But what did that mean? My mind raced. Was she talking about me? Had I already been part of some twisted plan all along, and I just hadn't seen it? Had she been playing me, using me as a pawn in whatever sick game she was orchestrating? I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the only sound in the room the quiet hum of the laptop. The footage flickered, showing another angle of Catherine and the man, their faces hidden in the shadows of the room. They were talking in low voices, too faint for me to make out the words, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that my wife was involved in something far deeper than I could have ever imagined. I knew I had to confront her, but part of me was terrified of what I'd learn. What if everything I thought I knew about Catherine was a lie? What if she had been planning this all along? I pulled myself away from the screen, my hands shaking as I closed the laptop and turned off the basement light. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. Catherine had always been a bit mysterious, but I never thought she was capable of something like this. Sure, we'd had our differences over the years, but this was something else entirely. I needed answers, and I wasn't sure if I wanted them or if I was ready to face the truth. But I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. I had to confront her. I took a deep breath and slowly made my way back upstairs. As I reached the kitchen, I found her standing at the counter, preparing coffee like nothing had happened. It was as if she hadn't just been caught on camera, plotting something I couldn't even begin to understand. She turned as I entered the room, and a smile spread across her face. "Morning," she said, her voice too sweet, too calm. "What's wrong? You look like you had a nightmare or something." I said nothing. I didn't know how to respond. How could I explain what I had seen in the basement, what I had heard on those tapes? How could I look at the woman I'd loved for so long and ask her why she was conspiring behind my back? Instead, I walked to the table, sat down across from her, and just stared. The silence between us felt heavy, suffocating. She didn't seem bothered by it, though. In fact, she acted like everything was perfectly normal. Her eyes locked onto mine, and she waited for me to speak. But I couldn't find the words. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my recorder. I clicked the button and pressed play. Her voice echoed through the room, clear as day. "He doesn't suspect anything. A little more, and he will break down." The words sent a chill through me, and I watched her face closely, waiting for any sign of guilt, any hint that she knew I had heard it. But she just sat there, looking at me, her smile never wavering. For a moment, I thought I might snap. My fingers clenched into fists, and the urge to scream at her, to demand an explanation, nearly consumed me. But I held back, fighting the urge to lash out. I couldn't lose control, not now. I had to stay calm. I had to figure out what was going on. Finally, she spoke, as if nothing were wrong. "What? You look like you've seen a ghost. A little too much caffeine, maybe." Her voice was playful, but there was an edge to it, something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a game anymore. Whatever she was involved in, it was bigger than both of us. And I had a feeling I was just scratching the surface. I couldn't sit there any longer, pretending like everything was fine. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Catherine didn't even flinch. She just watched me, her smile still in place. I turned away from her, fighting the urge to run. But I knew I couldn't leave, not yet. I had to find out the truth. "I'm going to the police," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. But before I could leave, the doorbell rang. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, and turned to Catherine. She didn't react, didn't even look surprised. It was as if she had been expecting it. I opened the door, and there, standing on the other side, was Michael, my brother. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked different, older, more worn out, but there was something in his eyes. Fear. Desperation. Without a word, he stepped inside, his gaze flicking nervously to Catherine, who was still sitting at the table. He turned back to me, his voice low and tense. "I need to talk to you, Jason. It's about Catherine." He hesitated, clearly struggling with something. "She used to be my girlfriend. You know that, right? But that's not all. She blackmailed me." I stared at him, trying to make sense of what he was saying. Blackmail? My mind raced as he continued. "She said if I didn't help her, she would tell you I was responsible for that accident 7 years ago." Michael's words hit me like a ton of bricks. The accident. The one that had cost me my career. The one that had changed everything. I had always thought it was just an unfortunate event. But now, my brother was telling me it was part of something much darker. My breath caught in my throat. Was the accident a trap? Had Catherine been manipulating me all this time? I didn't know how to respond. My world was falling apart, and I had no idea who I could trust anymore. I didn't know what to say. My brain was scrambling to process everything Michael had just dropped on me. The accident. The blackmail. Catherine. The woman I had shared my life with, my hopes and dreams, was somehow involved in all of this. My head felt like it was spinning, and I was struggling to find my footing. I had always trusted Catherine, always believed in her, even through the rough patches in our relationship. But now, it was clear that trust had been shattered. My brother stood in front of me, his face pale and worn. His eyes were filled with something I hadn't seen in years, guilt. And yet, there was a hesitation in his voice that made everything he said even harder to believe. "Are you telling me that Catherine blackmailed you?" I asked, the words feeling like lead in my mouth. "She's the one who set up the accident?" Michael nodded, looking uncomfortable with every word. "She said she would tell you that I was the one who caused it, that I was the reason you lost everything. But that's not the whole truth, Jason." His eyes flickered to Catherine, who was still sitting at the table, her face unreadable, her expression cool and detached. She hadn't even moved since I had come in. It was as though everything had been planned, orchestrated, and she was just waiting for the right moment to reveal the rest of the story. Michael cleared his throat and stepped closer. I thought I could just keep her quiet. Do what she wanted, keep my secrets buried. But the thing is, I didn't know what she had planned for you. I didn't know that she was using you, too. My heart was pounding in my chest as the words sank in. The accident, the one that had cost me my career, it had been manipulated, staged. And Catherine had been pulling the strings all along. What exactly did she want from you? I asked, my voice hoarse. What was she after? Michael shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between me and Catherine. She needed me to help her get close to you. She wanted information. She needed to know how much you knew, how close you were to finding out the truth about her. He swallowed hard. I thought she was just trying to use me to keep you distracted, to keep you from asking questions. But it's worse than that. She's been playing both of us. I looked at Catherine, still sitting across from me, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, her gaze never wavering. She was calm. Too calm. It was as if everything was going according to plan. I felt a surge of anger flood my chest, but I held it back, not wanting to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. You've been playing me, Catherine, I said, my voice low and steady, though my hands were clenched into fists. What the hell is going on? Who are you really working for? She didn't flinch. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look like anything, really. She just looked at me, her face blank, as if she were waiting for the punchline. I'm working for myself, she finally said, her voice soft and measured. And you, Jason, have been nothing more than a means to an end. My stomach twisted. I couldn't process it. Catherine, my wife, the woman I had spent my life with, the one who had always been by my side, was a stranger. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me, the truth settling in like a heavy weight on my chest. Catherine wasn't just hiding something. She had been playing a much larger game, and I had been nothing more than a pawn. I turned back to Michael, trying to make sense of everything he had just told me. So, what now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What do we do about this? Michael hesitated. I don't know, he said, his voice cracking slightly. I don't know what you should do, Jason, but you can't let her keep playing you. She's been manipulating everything. She's been one step ahead this whole time. I felt a sudden wave of anger rush through me. She's been ahead? All this time. My voice broke with the force of the words. You think I don't know that? I've been the one in the dark this entire time. I've been the one who didn't see it. Catherine's expression remained unchanged as I turned to look at her again. How long have you been planning this? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. She didn't answer at first. But then, slowly, she put down her coffee cup and stood up, her movements graceful and deliberate. I've been planning this for a long time, Jason, she said, her voice eerily calm. Longer than you could imagine. My mind reeled. There was so much I didn't understand. So many pieces I couldn't put together. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about the accident. It wasn't just about the blackmail. This was about something much bigger. And now, it was clear that Catherine was at the center of it all. As much as I hated it, I knew I couldn't just walk away from this. The truth was out there, and I needed to find it. But I couldn't do it alone. I turned to Michael, still standing in the doorway, looking as lost as I felt. I need your help, I said, my voice strained. I don't know who else to trust, but I need you. Michael nodded, his face tight with anxiety. I'll help you, Jason, he said, his voice steady. But this isn't just about Catherine. There's something much darker going on here, and I'm not sure we're ready for it. His words sent a chill down my spine, and I realized he was right. We weren't ready. None of us were. The game was far from over, and the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. The air in the house felt thick, suffocating, as if the walls were closing in on me with every passing second. My mind was a whirlwind of questions, a swirling storm of confusion and anger that I couldn't seem to calm. Catherine had been playing me for God knows how long, manipulating everything, pulling strings in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. And Michael, my brother, had been wrapped up in it, too. For years, I had thought I knew the truth about the accident, about everything that had happened. But now, the world I thought I understood was slipping through my fingers, unraveling faster than I could hold on to it. I knew I needed answers. I couldn't keep living in this fog of lies and half-truths. But as much as I wanted to go to the police, to confront the truth head-on, I had an uneasy feeling that it wasn't going to be that simple. Catherine had been careful, meticulous. She wasn't just hiding behind lies. She was orchestrating a master plan, and I was only just starting to realize how deep the rabbit hole went. Every move she made, every piece of the puzzle she put together, had been calculated. And now, standing in the midst of all this chaos, I had to figure out how to outsmart her, if that was even possible. I stood there in the kitchen for a moment, staring at Michael. His words echoed in my mind. There's something much darker going on here. And I could feel it too. The weight of the situation was pressing down on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever Catherine was planning, it was much bigger than I could comprehend. But the moment Michael had walked through that door, telling me about the blackmail and everything that had happened in the past, I knew there was no turning back. I had to confront Catherine. I had to make her face the truth. But before I could take another step, the doorbell rang again. I froze, my body stiffening. Who else could it be? The last thing I needed was another surprise. I felt a surge of frustration, a sudden need to take control of the situation before it spiraled further. With a deep breath, I walked toward the door, trying to steady myself. I could hear Michael's footsteps behind me, but I didn't turn around. As I opened the door, I was met with an unexpected face. It was Jared, the private investigator, the man who had been hired to follow me. I hadn't seen him in months, not since I'd first hired him to gather information on Catherine. I trusted him, or at least I thought I had. But now, in the context of everything I'd learned, I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. What was he doing here? Why was he showing up now, of all times? Jason, Jared said, his voice low and tense, his eyes darting nervously between me and Michael. We need to talk. My gut twisted. I didn't trust him anymore, not after everything that had happened. But there was something about the urgency in his tone that made me pause. I stepped back to let him in, the door closing softly behind him as I led him into the living room. I don't know what Catherine's told you, Jared started, his voice barely above a whisper. But you need to understand something. I wasn't working for her. He took a deep breath, and I could see the anxiety in his eyes. I was hired by someone else. Someone who wanted to keep tabs on you, to see how close you were to figuring things out. And the truth is, I thought I was working for you. I blinked, my confusion deepening. You thought you were working for me? I repeated, my voice tight with disbelief. Then what the hell is going on? Who hired you? Jared hesitated, his eyes flicking to Michael before he lowered his voice even further. I can't say too much, but I was hired by someone who wanted to make sure you never found out what Catherine was up to. They knew you were getting close, Jason. They knew you were starting to piece things together, and they wanted to make sure that didn't happen. I felt a chill run through me. Someone else? Who the hell could be behind all this? Who would want to keep me from the truth? The words felt like they were stuck in my throat as the realization hit me. Catherine had been playing me, yes, but this? This was something bigger. Jared's face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he looked at me, as if he had just crossed a line he couldn't take back. I can't give you any names, but I can tell you this. Whoever they are, they've been watching you just as closely as Catherine has. And they've been feeding her information. She's not working alone in all of this. She's part of something much bigger, Jason. You're not the target. Not yet. But if you keep digging, if you keep pushing for answers, you'll be in the crosshairs. I felt the ground shift beneath me as the weight of his words settled in. Catherine wasn't just part of some personal vendetta. She was a cog in a much larger machine, and I was standing in the middle of it. I was tangled up in something far more dangerous than I could have imagined. How long has this been going on? I demanded, the anger in my voice rising despite myself. How long has she been working with these people? How much of my life is a damn lie? Jared shook his head, his eyes wide with fear. I don't know everything, Jason, but I know enough to tell you that you need to get out of this. You need to stop looking for answers. For your own safety, just walk away. Michael, who had been standing silently by the door, spoke up, his voice surprisingly calm. I don't think that's an option anymore. He looked at me, his eyes hard. You can't just walk away from this, Jason. Not now. We're too deep in it. I turned back to Jared, my mind racing. What happens now? What's our next move? Jared stood frozen for a moment, his face taut with the weight of what he was about to say. I can't promise you anything, but if you want to get to the bottom of this, if you want to find Catherine and figure out what she's really up to, you're going to have to go off the grid. There are too many eyes on you now, and you won't get anywhere playing by the rules. I felt a cold sweat trickle down my spine as the enormity of the situation sank in. Catherine had disappeared, yes, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I had no idea where to begin or how to untangle the mess I was in, but one thing was certain, this was only the beginning. The game wasn't over. And the longer I stayed in the dark, the more dangerous it became. I turned to Michael, then back to Jared. I don't know where this road leads, but we're going to find out. Together. Neither of them said anything, but the look in their eyes told me that whatever was ahead, it was going to be a lot more complicated than I could imagine. It had been days since Catherine disappeared. The house felt empty, silent, and every corner seemed to echo with the weight of unanswered questions. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, but I wasn't the type of man to let fear dictate my actions. I had to keep moving forward, no matter how many unknowns lay ahead. The trail had gone cold, and no matter how many places I searched or how many people I contacted, there were no answers. Catherine had vanished without a trace, leaving me with nothing but the remnants of a life I didn't recognize. The man who had been my wife, the woman who had shared my bed and my life for so long, was someone I no longer understood. And the deeper I dug into the mystery, the more I realized I didn't even know who she truly was. The weight of the situation was suffocating. I had hoped the truth would come to light, that somehow everything would make sense in the end, but the truth only raised more questions. The accident that had ruined my career, the blackmail, the surveillance, and everything that had led up to this moment, it was all connected. I could feel it in my gut, a gnawing certainty that Catherine's disappearance wasn't just some escape. It was part of something much bigger. But what? What had she been preparing? What was her endgame? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the answers weren't just in her disappearance. They were hidden in the details, in the things she had left behind. I hadn't told Michael everything. There were still pieces of the puzzle that didn't fit, things I hadn't shared with him. One of those things was a letter I found in the church a few days after Catherine vanished. It had been left in the back pew, tucked into the crevice where no one would find it unless they knew to look. It wasn't signed, and it didn't need to be. The contents were enough to send a chill down my spine. Inside the envelope was a single photograph, one that seemed so innocuous at first, but as I stared at it, everything about it felt wrong. The picture showed Catherine standing at a grave. It was taken from a distance, the angle skewed, as if someone had been watching her from behind a tree or across the street. But what struck me the most was what she was holding. My wedding ring. She was holding it between her fingers, looking down at it with a somber expression. The image sent a wave of dread through me. Catherine wasn't just running away. She was preparing something. She had planned this, and everything that had happened up until now had been part of a game I couldn't even begin to understand. I stared at the photograph for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of what it meant. Why had she left this for me to find? What did the grave represent? It wasn't just about the ring, though that was a piece of it. It was the way she was standing there, the way she was holding the ring, like it was a symbol of something. A part of me wanted to believe that this was just some cruel joke, a way for her to torment me from afar. But another part of me, the part that had seen the truth in the footage from the basement, knew better. This wasn't a joke. This was a warning. Catherine wasn't done. She hadn't run away. She was still out there, still playing her game. And I had no idea what her next move would be. I sat there in the church for a long time, my mind racing. The photograph wasn't the end of the story. It was just another clue, another piece of the puzzle that didn't fit yet. But it was enough to tell me that the stakes were higher than I had realized. Catherine wasn't just playing games with me. She had been preparing for something I wasn't ready for. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't the end of the road. This was just the beginning. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I didn't know where to go from here. But one thing was certain. I couldn't stop. I had to keep going, keep looking, keep pushing for the truth. Because as long as Catherine was out there, as long as she was orchestrating this twisted game, I had no choice but to follow the trail wherever it led. I wasn't the one in control anymore. Catherine was. And she knew exactly how to make me play by her rules. I walked out of the church, the weight of the photograph still heavy in my hand, and stepped into the bright afternoon light. The world around me seemed unchanged, like nothing had shifted. But everything had shifted, and I wasn't sure I could ever go back to the life I had before. The world I had known was a lie, and now I had to figure out how to navigate the wreckage of everything that had been built on that lie. Catherine had left me with nothing but questions and a trail that was far from over. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. This game was far from finished, and I was going to find out how it ended, even if it destroyed me in the process.